Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. Talk too fast. Slow it down. Slow it down. Welcome to another episode. We are the Dynasty After Dark podcast. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. My co-host, Dale Terry at Dynasty_Dale. You can find the YouTube or the podcast Twitter at FF After Dark. You can find us on YouTube as well at Dynasty After Dark. But enough plugs, I guess. Dale, how we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about some of these guys tonight because I think a lot of them are going to be controversial, and sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, it's really fun to talk about controversial things because it just incites a lot of conversation, and hopefully it's thought provoking and not just like the dumb Twitter
Beef.
yeah
It's X
stuff that
beef,
that
man.
goes on.
It's X beef.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
it's X beef. X is going to give it to you, and I don't want any of it. So
X gonna
that's
give it
beside
to
the point. Yeah.
you.
So
No. So now that my brain is kind of in order here, let me start off
yes.
here. Today we're going to be talking about not our guys. So last episode, go check it out on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to this podcast. You can find the Our Guys episode where we gave you a few guys, one for each position that we think you should go and buy now. And we're putting our certified stamp for each of us on these guys going into this upcoming season. Guys that we think after this year are going to spike in value after, during or after this season, and they're going to maintain that in the future. We had guys like Mark Andrews, which feels like a little bit of a, oh yeah, duh, he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
But part of the argument was we think that he's going to be really good and for a really long time, and that's why we advise going to get him now. Another guy, like for example, I had Jerry Judy, Geno Smith as a couple of my
Mhm.
guys, and those guys are going a little bit further, but we both think that they're going to have value going forward, and they're going to maintain that after this upcoming season. So the purpose of that show was to talk up some guys, and today we are going to trash some guys, and it's always fun. You get to air your opinions on these guys that consensus would say otherwise, or you're kind of going with consensus and I'm saying otherwise. But yeah, there's some guys that we are both down on for each position, and we're going to
Mhm.
give you one of each position, and guys that if it was me, I'd be looking to sell them, and I would be looking to get out for peak value because I think that they are kind of at peak value right now, and after the season they're going to only dip or get worse in their current value. Now, this one's the most fun one because, if you follow fantasy football, dynasty football on Twitter, X, whatever, there's the fantasy receipts account, and this would be their
Mhm.
favorite podcast because they are just going to pull
Yes,
the receipts from
100%.
this if we're wrong about anything. But without giving our opinions and some controversial takes, there's no way for you to get an edge over your opponents, and that's what we're looking to do for you guys here. So that said, Dale, anything else before we jump into our not our guys?
Let's have it.
All right, let's hear we'll start with the quarterback position. Let's go through and hear who you are out on in 2023 and beyond.
All right. So the guy I'm out on, which really shouldn't be a surprise to a lot of people, is the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett. I know a lot of people are skittish about him anyways. He is going as the quarterback one, right? Or excuse me, not the quarterback one, quarterback 21. As of right now, like he's going, he's going behind, like Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, like he's going behind a couple of those guys, but I don't think he is the quarterback of the future for the Steelers. I think they're going to be looking here in a couple years, and I don't think I don't think he's talented enough to have that staying power in Dynasty, especially. So, like I think I would rather have like Kirk Cousins, who's going right after him. I would even rather have Brock Purdy because I know that's a better offense. Just plain and simple. So, I know the price is pretty low right now for on Kenny Pickett, but you know, I don't I still don't think he is going to produce as well as he probably should. I do think he's going to have a bump this year from last year because last year was horrible. It was utterly horrible. It was probably one of the worst rookie seasons we've seen in probably the last 5 or 6 years. It's by a numbers perspective. So
Hmm.
I do think he's going to have a little bit more of a bump, in more passing yards, more passing touchdowns, hopefully not as many interceptions, but I think I don't think he has a very high ceiling. I think he has a very, very low floor, and he's just not worth it for a low end quarterback to value. Like for me, he's barely hanging on a roster spot if I even have him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we're going to talk about it from a one quarterback perspective.
Mm.
But,
Yep.
in a two quarterback, people are going to be less likely to get rid of him. But I'm
Yes.
with Dale
100%.
100% on Kenny Pickett and his current value. The fact that you have guys like Dale mentioned, you have Kirk Cousins, Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, Sam Howell, Trey Lance, Derek
Hmm.
Carr. There is no chance. I hate Derek Carr from a fantasy perspective. There is no
Yeah.
chance that I'm taking Kenny Pickett above Derek Carr. No
Agreed.
chance.
Agreed.
Max,
Agreed.
Mac Jones, Matt Stafford. You even have
Desmond
Desmond
Ritter.
Ritter.
Desmond Ritter. Like I would head and shoulders rather have Desmond Ritter because I at least know that there's a lot of weapons there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that there's not a lot in Pittsburgh, but I I, I think there's at least more potential there, and I just don't think there's any um with Pickett.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% here. And we actually talked about this with our Steelers breakdown. If you go and listen to our offseason recap on the Steelers, we're both kind of in agreement. I know there's going to be some guys here coming up that we might disagree on,
Yep.
but, Kenny Pickett, the timeline that I see on Kenny Pickett is it was a bad quarterback class last year. Obviously, he was the only first round pick. Everyone else went in the third round. He wasn't even head and shoulders ahead of any of those other players. Like he was not a better quarterback than Malik Willis or Desmond Ritter. He was in the same
S-
boat as Desmond
Right.
Ritter. I think Desmond Ritter is
Yep.
actually better, but it is what it is. But they brought back Matt Canada for this upcoming season. They're going to give it a go with Matt Canada. I don't think Matt Canada makes it through the end of the year. I think he's going to get fired around week 10, 12, 13, somewhere in that range before the end of the season. Next year, they're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator and they're going to try and make it work. Oh, this guy's going to save Kenny Pickett. You're going to read the headlines everywhere. This guy will save Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett needs this guy to make him work. And he's going to be bad yet again. And they're going to be a bad team. And they're going to be drafting fairly highly for a quarterback. That's my 2-year window on Kenny Pickett, and then he'll be no more, essentially. So I'm with you 100%. If you can sell Kenny Pickett for any of those guys, Kirk Cousins, like
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, I get it. He was bad last year. We all acknowledge this. We all know. But he has the potential with Sean Payton to be a top 7 quarterback this year.
Mm-hmm.
Top 7. If you can sell Kenny Pickett
Yes.
for Russell Wilson, yes, please. Please do that. Go and do that
100%.
and make an amazing return on a bad player. That's my opinion here. So, any last thoughts on Pickett, or you want to go to my quarterback here?
I would much rather go to your quarterback.
All right. So here's one where we might actually disagree a little bit. My quarterback is going to be rookie Bryce Young. Bryce Young, yeah.
Hey.
Bryce Young is currently the quarterback number 14 in redraft, quarterback number 11 in Dynasty. The fact that he's, fringe quarterback 1 in redraft as a rookie, what are we doing, guys?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
No,
that, that
man.
that that does not make sense.
I know. And it's like the entire offseason, people have been complaining that Bryce Young has no weapons. The Panthers have no weapons. They traded their first for next year. They can't go and get one of those premier pass catchers. Maybe they can get somebody in round 2 next year, but you're going to have other holes on your team. And all of a sudden, this team has no weapons, but Bryce Young's going to be so good that he's going to be better than in redraft, just from a redraft perspective, right? Pull up the quarterbacks here. He's going to be better than Kyler Murray, which, okay, fine. Fair.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Bryce Young has dropped 2 since the last time I checked this. So he's quarterback 15 right now. So, but Jared Goff's worse than him. Brock Purdy, Daniel Jones, C.J. Stroud, Desmond Ritter, Derek Carr again, Geno Smith, the never loved Geno Smith, Mac Jones again. I'm big on Mac Jones this upcoming season. Matt Stafford, like all of these guys ahead of Bryce Young. What does Bryce Young give anybody for redraft specifically, like this one's crazy, but for Dynasty, he's currently the Dynasty quarterback 11. Like, guys, I get it. He's the number one overall pick. That doesn't make him good. Like for fantasy,
Right.
he can
It
be
doesn't.
fine for the NFL, and I hope he goes on to be a Hall of Famer. But he's not going to be amazing for fantasy because he's just too big of an outlier for fantasy football. He would break every outlying metric we've ever had for the quarterback position to be a productive fantasy quarterback. And that's just crazy to
Yes.
me. He's going ahead of Tua. I'd rather have Tua, Dak, DJ Stroud, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones again, Jared Goff, Geno Smith. There's a lot of guys, and I get it. He's the number one overall pick. You're paying a lot for him. The 103, 102 in a lot of rookie drafts. And I just don't think it's worth it. If you can sell Kyler for Geno Smith plus like a good wide receiver, yes, please sign me up for that. Like that's what I would want to be doing here with Bryce Young. So you can let me know your thoughts. What do you think about Bryce Young here?
I mean, I get it. I get where he's going. That's not a very appetizing, spot of where he's going at, but I think he has the potential to at least be a fringe quarterback one, in a couple years in Dynasty,
Maybe.
Yeah, in Dynasty. I'm not talking about redraft. I don't think he's gonna really ever have quarterback one value in redraft, in my opinion, but I still think he can be a solid quarterback. I know he still has some of the tools. I know he's shorter in stature, and I'm not a big Bryce Young guy, and you are definitely not. But I feel he at least has some potential to be a solid. I think he can be a solid quarterback too on your team. That's just me, but it's where he's getting drafted. I don't want to even be near him.
Right. And that's where, again, like you go back to the My Guys episode, we talked about Geno Smith. I'm very high on Geno this upcoming season because there's been nothing that has shown that he's going to be worse. Like, I'd rather have Geno as my quarterback number 2 over Bryce Young and get that first round pick, that,
Yep,
good wide receiver, that good running back, and go and get
100%.
one of those guys. So that's my thoughts there on Bryce Young. And I do think that people are still buying into him pretty heavily ahead of even CJ Stroud. And I think people are just going to have a lot of egg on their face after this upcoming season.
Yeah, no, and I definitely see that, and I think if you're rebuilding and you're looking more towards a couple years in the future, I think that could be a good pick. But if you're even in a remote window, I wouldn't even get near him.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear your running back. And this is one where we might disagree.
Mine is Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. I haven't been the biggest Josh Jacobs guy, I mean, I get it. He was fantastic last year. But I feel his team got worse in a quarterback. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of Jimmy G. I don't think Jimmy G's it. I mean, I would much rather have Derek Carr. That's just me.
Fair.
But I don't think he's going to replicate what he did last year. Like he was a rushing champ. He had 340 attempts. He also had 53. He also had 53 receptions, which is almost his career high. But he had a career high in yardage. Both receiving and rushing, and I just don't think he's going to replicate that. Right now he's the quarterback 9, which really isn't too hateful, but I know there's been a lot of people that have been reaching for him like in the second round, like ahead of like it's like ahead of like Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Barkley, Breece Hall even. I've been seeing Jacobs go ahead of those guys where I just don't think he's going to I don't think he's going to replicate that by any means. And that's why he's not my guy. And in that, like, I just don't think he's going to. I think he's going to I think he's going to disappoint numbers wise, and plus he's still kind of holding out in camp, which for a guy coming in his 5th year isn't a huge thing, but like he's still he's still out there. He's still not participating in the team. He's looking for a new contract, and I think it's just a mess. And I think that's gonna roll over into this year, and I just don't think he's going to be the guy. I think he can be a low end RB1, but I don't think he's going to be the top 5 guy that a lot of people think he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel you're not getting the return on your value if you pick him that where he's going.
Yeah, and that's where, some context makes a lot of sense on Josh Jacobs. You look, and we have it up here on YouTube, so you can see some of his sleeper stats, right, from the last couple of years. And last year, the year before, he had 64 targets in both years. So not really a big jump in the passing game. That's good. Don't get me wrong. 64 targets for a running back is really good.
It's fantastic.
Really useful.
Yes, it's fantastic.
50 catches, 50 plus in both years. Right around 350. That's a little bit of it's close enough. He's going to get around probably 350 to 375, somewhere in that range, probably again. But the biggest outlier from his entire career is he had 340 carries last year.
Yes.
That is a 70 carry jump from his other highest total, which was 2020. And I don't think you can, run a running back into the ground like that and expect them to stay healthy for an entire 17 games. That is extremely rare. 2, Josh Jacobs isn't really built like that. Like, he's a bigger guy. He's thicker, but he's shorter, right? Yeah. So, he's kind of filled out for his proportions, but I don't think that you can give a guy that many carries and expect him to hold up. So that doesn't really make sense. And then 3, you're betting on another outlier season where he has 340 carries and everything like that. If you look what the Raiders did this entire offseason, they added pass catchers all over the board. Michael Mayer, they added, Jacoby Myers. Yep. They tried to really revamp this passing game.
Offense.
And that's where Jimmy G kind of comes in and is a little bit better for fantasy, at least for the receivers, than Derek Carr, in my opinion, because he's actually going to try and throw it to him down the field a little bit. That's kind of Derek Carr's problem, is he only checks it down 5 yards. That's why Devontae Adams had like 200 targets last year. It was crazy. But, they're going to try and throw the ball down the field a little bit more. And by doing that, that means Josh Jacobs is not going to be the primary target, or, for some of these handoffs and the short game, it's not going to be as good for the team this upcoming year. So I'm with you 100%. I do think that he's going to have a down year compared to last year, where he was the RB number 3 in PPR. I do think he can still be a top 10 guy for sure. He's basically locked in as a top 10 guy, in my opinion. But a couple of the guys going after him in Dynasty, for example, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, I'm okay with him going ahead of Etienne, to be honest. I'd rather have Jacobs than Etienne. Right. But Najee, I'd rather have Najee, personally. I'd rather have, Javonte, well, if you need to win now, I'd rather have Josh Jacobs. If you want
100%
long term, give me Javonte. So it feels right. It feels right around the RB 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. But I do think that people are kind of valuing him a little bit higher than that. And ironically,
I believe they are.
He's the RB 9 in redraft as well. And this is where it's a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me. I've been seeing him go much earlier than that in a lot of leagues, and a lot of people are excited about what he did last year, but it's just the trends in the NFL aren't looking in his favor with this outlier of a season, and
the contract stuff and all that.
I mean there's a lot of things that aren't going in his favor to be able to replicate that, and that's where I think some people are going to get stuck. And I like Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to be a good running back this year and for the next couple years, but I think buyer beware a little bit and try to rate him more appropriately.
Yeah, and I do think that one thing, the ADP right now is an aggregate of the fanatics, right? The degenerates who've been doing this for months, right? And the redraft rankings, once a lot of the casual players get out there and start to change this, I think what you just said is perfect summation of what people are going to look at. He was the RB3 last year, and why am I taking him at RB9? I'm going to take him top 5, and I think that's what's going to ultimately kind of push him up there, and that's where, again, it's just a little bit more of the buyer beware that you mentioned right there. So I like that. Josh Jacobs is a little bit scary. I do think that I'd rather sell him now than in the future. So
Yes, 100%.
That's our thoughts there. All right, my running back is going to be Rhamondre Stevenson with the New England Patriots. And I've been out on this guy for a while now. People have been in on him. And it's crazy because you go to the fantasy footballers and they're, the pinnacle, the kings of the fantasy sports podcasting world, I guess, for fantasy football. And, one of the hosts, Mike Wright, he believes Rhamondre is a top 4. I think he has him at 4, maybe still at 3, but a top 3 running back for this upcoming season. And I think that his logic is just so crazily flawed because I get it. He had an amazing target share last year. 88 targets. That's great. You love that for a running back. It's not going to happen again. I hate to break it to you guys, but we had a defensive coordinator and a special teams coach running our offense. It's not going to happen. Bill O'Brien is not going to scheme up Rhamondre Stevenson for more than even 60 targets this upcoming year. I think they're going to try and utilize the actual wide receivers this upcoming season. And
and the tight ends that they have.
Yes. Yeah,
because
exactly.
they brought Mike Gesicki too, and they have Hunter Henry back. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Yeah, I think he's overrated. I think he's overinflated, I guess you can say, by these media staples that are kind of pumping these guys up, which I do think
I get it. I do understand it,
100%.
The thing is, like, if you're looking at his target share, in year 1 as a rookie, he had 18 targets. Last year, he had 88 targets. That's a 70 target increase. And, it's good, but I just think which one of those is an outlier, the 88 targets or the 18, So I think it can be somewhere in the middle, but I think 88 is the ceiling that he's never going to see again. And if he takes, let's say he has 30 less targets this upcoming season, all of a sudden he goes from RB number 7 in PPR leagues to probably around, I don't even know, probably around like RB 12, 14, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And I think that you look at his efficiency stats, he did nothing with those receptions either. And that's why I don't think that it's going to be repeatable this upcoming year. He had 69 catches for 400 yards. 400 yards. Like, that's what all you need to know about last year's scheme, right? It was atrocious. He's a very good player.
Horrific, yeah.
He is very explosive in the open field when you can get him on the one-on-ones. But I just think that it's kind of crazy that people are looking at that and saying, oh, yeah, that's definitely repeatable, because it's not. It's 100% not. And there's been all this smoke about them signing Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook or Leonard Fournette or any of them. It's going to be somebody. They're going to bring somebody in to compete with him. And then you look at who else is on this offense, right? You've got Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, these guys that are getting a lot of buzz from training camp right now. And I think that it's a little crazy to value Rhamondre Stevenson as the RB number 10 in redraft. You're just going to get burned there. And RB 14 in Dynasty. Like, sell now.
It's scary.
Can.
It's very scary. And, I think another thing is that Bill's never really been a guy that has one running back.
Yeah.
That's, that's been the guy. Like, he normally has a stalwart of players that are ready. And with Stevenson, like, he has had some fumbling issues, so like, it could just be one or two more fumbles and he's not playing for a couple weeks.
Yeah, he had 4 fumbles last year, and that's about 3 more than Bill Belichick will allow. So he is on
probably 4
ice.
more, but that's beside the point. Yes.
Right.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, Rhamondre Stevenson, he's just a little bit of a crazy value right now. I would be out completely because I don't think he's gonna drop after this year for sure. The bottom's gonna fall out. He's not gonna finish as highly as people think, and then they're not gonna want to invest in him after the season. So sell while you can. I don't think you're gonna lose that much production from a week to week basis. So if you can get out now and get a premium for Rhamondre, 100%, that would be what I'd be looking to do. So. Let's go jump over to your wide receiver here.
All right, so my wide receiver is second-year receiver Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. Um, he had a very interesting 2022. He didn't really come onto the scene until really it was week 10 with Dallas where he had he had 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think in a 4-week span he had 7 touchdowns, and you know how many touchdowns he scored in this season? 7. So and that's great. Like he is electric, and I think he showed a little bit at the end of the year with Jordan Love when he came into play against. I think he played when he was with Philadelphia in the Philadelphia game. That was a blowout game. But like there is some chemistry there, but he has an unproven quarterback in Jordan Love, which I don't mind Jordan Love. I think he can be a decent quarterback, but their offensive scheme is a little bit more run heavy than it has been in years past. It's been trending more and more that way. And plus, like, these long touchdowns are not a sticky stat, and along with that, like, they did draft a couple pass catching options. Like, they got Jalen Reed in the second round, along with Luke Musgrave and I think it was Tyler Kraft. It was the other guy. So I think there's a lot going against Christian Watson and his value. I think right now he is the wide receiver 20. He's going ahead of Quentin Johnston, Calvin Ridley, Brandon Ayuk, Terry McLaurin, Traylon Burks, Chris Godwin. Like, those are, I think, for the most part, like, those are guys I would rather have and feel comfortable with than Christian Watson. I think he's too boomer bust right now. I mean, I would even rather have Zay Flowers, which I like Zay Flowers more than you do, but I think Christian Watson is too boomer bust for the value where he's going at. So, unfortunately, I kind of see his value being like kind of like Gabe Davis was last year, that we were all hyped about him and what he did, and then things happened and his value crashes, which I think is what's going to happen with Christian Watson. I do think he's a good player, but I don't think he's wide receiver 20.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Terry McLaurin, like, there's a lot of guys. And the other thing, too, that you didn't even mention was he might not even be the number one wide receiver on this team.
Exactly.
All the reports are that Romeo Doubs and Jordan Love have an amazing connection, and Romeo Doubs seems to be the number one with Jordan Love. And, the nice thing about Christian Watson is he doesn't need a ton of targets to really make use of them. I mean, he only had 66 targets last year, 41 catches for 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he was a big threat kind of guy, big play kind of threat. But I'm with you. He does not have Aaron Rodgers. That's the biggest statement that you can make right now.
That's the biggest thing, yes.
Aaron Rodgers is able to put that on a dime anywhere on the field, right? So I think that's going to hurt Christian Watson a little bit, and he's not even his quarterback's number one right now. So I'm with you. I would rather have Romeo Doubs than Christian Watson, and I'm not afraid to admit that.
Hey, that's very fair.
All right. Now, this one I know we're going to disagree on, but that's all right. My wide receiver is going to be one other than Christopher Olave. And Chris Olave is way too overinflated right now. It's crazy. He's currently the Dynasty wide receiver 9. He's the redraft wide receiver number 11. He finished as the wide receiver 25 last year. And before everyone goes, oh, but that was last year with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was fairly decent last year compared to Derek Carr. You look at Derek Carr last year, and he had 502 pass attempts. Let's pull up Andy Dalton here and see what Andy Dalton was in. His usage last year. About 120 less attempts, but he was about as productive. He had almost the same number of completions as Derek Carr, and about the same number of yards, and about the same number of touchdowns. So what is going to change for Chris Olave? You couple that with the fact that, they bring in Derek Carr. Derek Carr, his biggest problem is I want to swear a little bit. He's kind of a pussy. And Derek Carr does not throw the ball down the field. That's his biggest problem.
Yes.
He is a chicken. He dumps it off. He is like one of the lowest depth of targets of any quarterback in the last decade. It is insane. He throws it near the line of scrimmage every single time. Now, that can play to Chris Olave's strengths a little bit, but I think that he's going to dump it off to Michael Thomas, who should supposedly finally be healthy. But Derek Carr is going to pass the ball around a lot. Kendre Miller is going to be involved heavily, I think, personally. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be involved after his suspension here for 3 games. And I just think that Chris Olave had 120 targets last year, 72 catches for 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. What is his ceiling? There's no way that he's going to blow these numbers out of the water. And people are already crowning Chris Olave as a top 10 dynasty player. And he has not proven it. He's 23 years old. I get it. He's young. We are obsessed with these young wide receivers. But Chris Olave is a good player. He's not an elite player. And then we need to evaluate him successfully. If you have Chris Olave, sell him right now because you will never get this value on him again. This is exactly like you mentioned, the DJ Moore of a couple years ago. DJ Moore was going as the wide receiver 4 in Dynasty just a few years ago, and he's never finished as a wide receiver 1, not one time. And I think that is kind of Chris Olave's path to fantasy. I just don't ever see him being a top 12 guy because I don't see that path to success for him. So I know you're going to disagree, so let me hear your full case for why you are high on Chris Olave.
Again, I know I say this quite a bit. I know I'm biased, but I understand your argument of him being overinflated and being the wide receiver 9. I'm okay with that argument. Like I'm okay with that. But I think he's like Keenan Allen to me. So, in that he just knows how to get open. Like he's a route tactician. Like he can find the soft spots in the defense, and he just has a knack for that. I understand that Derek Carr doesn't throw the ball downfield, but who else do they have to throw to in New Orleans? Like they have an always injured Mike Thomas. They have Foster Moreau, who's coming off his battle with leukemia. And Juwan Johnson. They have it's a corpse of Alvin Kamara. They have Jamal Williams, who is getting up there. Like they have Kendre Miller, but he's injured. So like who else do they have to have there to throw the ball to other than Chris Olave? And I understand your logic and I get it, but I think there's too much in organizationally with the Saints that are pointing towards this guy's going to be the guy for the next decade there. And I understand that he may not provide you with consistent, top 12 seasons, but he's going to be right around there every year, every single year.
See,
and
he hasn't even been a wide receiver 2 yet. That's the problem.
And
that's a big jump.
That's a fair statement, but I believe in the talent. I believe it's there, and I just think that I just feel there's too much going for him. I do expect him to have very, very similar numbers. He only had 4 touchdowns last year. In and then their offense was pretty poor at best, and there were some games where he just didn't play part of the game, and and so I think there's a lot more potential that he can go up. I think he's going to be like annually like 1,000-yard receiver, and he only had 120 targets. I think I think that can go up to 150. And his receptions are going to go up, in my opinion. I think he can have 85 to 90 receptions annually, and I think that is that. I know. I'm doing a lot of projecting, but that's what we do in Dynasty is project. So I see the talent there. I saw it for many years at Ohio State. So I see it more than Calvin does. But again, I have a different scope.
See, here's the craziest thing for me. Chris Olave is currently the wide receiver 9 in
9, yeah.
Dynasty.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 10 is Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yep.
I'd rather have Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah. I
I'd
don't
rather have Stephon
I
Diggs.
understand that.
I'd rather have
I
Devonta
understand
Smith.
those arguments.
Like, that's the problem, like, for me
Well,
personally.
I would rather have Olave than Devonta Smith.
I'd rather have
That's just
Smith,
me.
and I don't even like Smith that much. I just think that Smith has a higher
that's
path to top 12 than Chris Olave does.
that's
I'd rather have DK Metcalf. There's just a lot of guys
right.
that I'd rather have than Chris Olave. And, I love it. I'm all aboard the hype train, but we have to stop crowning guys before they actually prove it. Like Garrett Wilson, I don't love him being wide receiver 5, his former Ohio State teammate, right? Garrett Wilson on the field showed that he was a difference maker. Chris Olave was a good player last year. He was not a special player like Garrett Wilson.
But he was still a difference maker. I
don't think he was. That's the difference.
And that's fair.
Yeah, so
that is very fair.
Chris Olave, in my opinion, and Dale disagrees. So find a Dale in your league. There are plenty.
Always.
I am on the minority in this argument for sure. I fully admit that. But after this year, we're gonna have a conversation about Chris Olave again and how he's not a top 12 guy. And I will toot my horn on this one if I get it correct. But there are Dales out there, and I would definitely be selling to the Dale for a peak because I just don't see Chris Olave ever being this high again. You know what I mean? So
fair enough.
I don't think that he's going to go higher in the rankings, in the draft board, but you will see. I am fully ready to admit when I'm wrong, but Chris Olave is my wide receiver sell. Get out while you still can. Let's hear your tight end sell, and then we'll kind of wrap up here.
All right. So my tight end sell is TJ Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings. TJ Hockenson was awesome last year. He was still even pretty good when he was with on the Lions. He was decent at least. And then he got traded. I think I think it was week 6 he got traded, and then he finally got implemented in that Vikings offense. And he was great. He was being targeted heavily by Kirk Cousins. Like he ended up with a career high in targets, receptions, yards.
Everything.
Yards. Yeah, almost everything.
Right. Yeah, he tied with 6 touchdowns. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But he finished as the PPR tight end 2, which is fantastic, but again, that's like about 100 yards or about 100 points less than Travis Kelce, which is
unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately so. But
his day is coming.
Yes, 100%. But with TJ Hockenson, this last year was his peak, his absolute peak, and his ceiling. I don't see him doing that again because they added Jordan Addison in the draft. I think he's going to be the third guy in the offense, but they still have KJ Osborne there. They have Alexander Madison, who's going to take up some targets. I think he's going to take some of Dalvin Cook's targets. But I understand that Adam Thielen, had a lot of targets, and they have to go somewhere.
107.
But I think
just looked it up.
Yep. Yes. I'm looking it up as I'm talking. Like Adam Thielen had 107 targets.
That's a lot.
That is a whole heck of that's a lot of targets, and I think the vast majority of those are going to go to Jordan Addison.
I agree with that. So
in all honesty, I think those are going to get split up between Addison and KJ Osborne, and the Minnesota defense is getting a little bit better, but I know they're going to have opportunities, and they're always going to have some opportunities on that offense with Justin Jefferson, but there's Justin Jefferson there as well. I forgot to mention him. Like he's the dynasty wide receiver 1 in my opinion, and he's just that guy. So, I think you could sell on the bump that Hockenson was elite last year, and I don't think he's going to return the value. He is currently the dynasty tight end number 4, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Redraft number 4 as well.
Yes, which I think for this year, I think with what happened last year in the volatility of the tight end position, I think that's a very fair ranking. But, I can see the Dalton Kincaid's of the world, coming up. Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer is going to be there.
Sure.
I think he's going to eventually go further down and become a lower tight end one compared to an upper tight end one.
Yeah,
And
that's fair. That's a fair
yeah,
argument.
yeah. So I see that, his value's just going to keep diminishing at this point. And I think people are drafting him, especially in redraft. Like he's like going in like the third or fourth round sometime, which is bananas. I wouldn't even, I think the only tight ends I'd take are Andrews and Kelsey at that point. And those guys are league winners in my opinion, or can be,
Right.
and I feel Hockenson is going to regress back to his mean of of being decent but not being. I think he was basically the wide receiver 2 last year.
Yeah.
I can see him. Yeah, yeah,
So here's my thoughts, and this is why I
yeah,
disagree with you a little bit. And
yeah.
it's because of the position. Tight end
Yep.
sucks so
It
bad.
does. It does.
So
It
the
does.
reason why I'm not
100%.
selling TJ Hawkins is because I do think that he might see a little bit of a regression in targets. I don't think it's going to be a big one. 129 targets is a lot. They threw the most in Kirk Cousins' career last year, but I do think that it's going to continue. This is a West Coast offense. The play action pass, from the McVay tree, and they get rid of Dalvin Cook. I like Alexander Madison, but I do think that Alexander Madison's a little bit more of he's a capable pass catcher, so I don't think the passing attempts are going to come down. They're definitely not going towards a run first or even run like 40% of the time scheme, right?
Right.
So it's going to be a pass heavy offense. 107 targets for Adam Thielen. Maybe Jordan Addison gets all of those. Maybe he can even get a little bit more of those. I don't think Justin Jefferson is going to get many more targets. He had 184 last year. That seems about
Right.
as high as you're going to go for a wide receiver. Even barring injury, if he stays healthy, knock on wood, right? But I do think that TJ Hockenson is one of the few tight ends in the league that is locked into 100 to 120 targets this upcoming year. They might be short, they might not be the prettiest targets, but that is a lot of targets. And when the tight end position is as choppy and as rocky as we all know it can be, I am not selling TJ Hockenson just because of that reason right there. I want the guy that's going to get a lot of targets and he's going to be safe. And, he has week winning ability as well when he gets some multi-touchdown games, but he also is somebody that can, be just fine as well. So that's why I like TJ Hockenson. I'm not selling him, but I do understand your argument, and it is possible that they're going to go more towards a pass first kind of or a wide receiver first offense. But I think that this offense, especially when you look at Tyler Higbee with the Rams, right, who was there with Kevin O'Connell, I think that they're just going to always utilize the tight end for a peppering underneath, and that's what TJ Hockenson is going to be good at, and Kirk Cousins has always loved the tight end as his kind of safety valve there as well. All right, my tight end, though, we'll jump into him really quickly, is going to be Evan Engram with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the reason why I'm out on Evan Engram, he is still currently the Dynasty tight end number 10. There's a lot of guys right there that I think you mentioned are a threat to him. David Njoku, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, Chig Okonkwo. Those guys are all guys I could see passing him up this year. He is the redraft tight end number 8, which is a little rich. And when you look at his game log, last year he finished as the tight end number 5. That's great. That is awesome. You love to see it. But he had 40 points in one game and 20 points in another. And that was about, a third of his entire points in 2 games. That is a lot.
Wow.
There was a lot of games where he had sub 10 points. There's a few games where, he was right around 10, 15, didn't kill you. But I think that with the addition of Calvin Ridley, they still have Christian Kirk. Zay Jones has been very good from all reports this entire offseason. Tank Bigsby, everyone is talking about how good his hands are. Travis Etienne. There's no world in my mind, personally, where I can see Evan Engram getting 98 targets this upcoming season. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I'm happy for him that he got a big contract. 3-year contract for $42 million. That's great. It's a Doug Peterson offense, so I always think that they're going to utilize the tight end, but he's not going to be the top 5 guy. He's going to be a fringe tight end 1 going forward. And I like Evan Engram, but this is an outlier for him as well. 73 completions out of 98 targets. That is the highest completion percentage he's ever had in his career. He's normally around a 60% completion. That's about a 80% completion rate, 75. That is a big jump up. And now it's possible his hands got a lot better as he got older, but I'm not betting on that outlier right there. So just a thought on Evan Engram. I would be selling him for guys like Sam Laporta or David Njoku even. Knowing that Deshaun Watson loves the tight end position, I'd 100% be going for David Njoku. Even Pat Freiermuth, I think, is going a little bit too cheap in redraft. And then you get over to Dynasty. You got Michael Mayer, you got Sam Laporta, you got Chig, Njoku, Dalton Schultz, who's still a good player. Trey McBride might surprise some people this upcoming season. Irv Smith is always kind of there, lingering out there. Noah Fant has fallen off a face of the earth in terms of his ranking, but there's a lot of guys that I think are going to compete and push the bottom tier of tight ends out of the top 10, and I think that Evan Engram is going to be one of them. So give me your quick thoughts, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's the biggest thing that hurts him is Calvin Ridley. And he's been exploding in camp. Like we get all these camp smoke and stuff like that. And I think there's going to be a lot to it, in my opinion, with Calvin Ridley.
That is a fire. That is a blazing.
It's in fuego.
Fire.
I'm going to say something probably I shouldn't. Like it's a Canadian wildfire right now.
I was just going to make the same joke.
It cannot be contained right now, and it is not good for our health. But that's beside the point. So I think there's a lot of fire to what is going on with Calvin Ridley, and that's just going to take away from Evan Engram. So, and I think Calvin Ridley is going to be the safety net and not Evan Engram as much. So, I think he could be. And plus he actually did sign a 3-year contract. So if you're looking at it, he's going to be good in 2 years. So like you have a couple years of mediocrity because he's only good when he's on the 1-year contracts, unfortunately.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, but that's neither here nor there.
Yep. So that's my thoughts. That's my tight end. I would just be selling. And again, I know the tight end position kind of sucks. And
it does.
A tight end that can give you 20 points, 40 points. It's great. But again, give me Sam Laporta, who I think is going to be a more consistent option. Again, this is the same reason why I like Hockenson. I want the guy that's going to get 8 targets a game. And I don't see that for Evan Engram. He's going to be sporadic, and, Evan Engram with sporadic is not a good combination. So the fact that he's older and, he's 29 years old, Sam Laporta is going to be 22 and a half right now. So just give me that age gap and I'm willing to completely move on. So that is my tight end position. You got any other thoughts here on the not my guys?
Nope.
All right. So this was a fun one. Again, we're trying to kind of give our opinions on guys that we think are going too highly. And we don't always agree on everything, obviously. See the Chris Olave take here. But, we're doing what we honestly believe. And if I had Chris Olave, I would honestly be shopping him around right now and trying to sell him. I probably would have sold him like months ago personally. But,
probably.
But I'm not telling you anything, and Dale's not telling you anything that we don't believe in. So, you can agree with us, you can disagree with us, but we are trying to definitely help you guys out there. So, let us know your thoughts down on the comments down below on YouTube. You can hit us up on Spotify, Apple, Google. While you're over on any of these, if you can, like the podcast, it just helps us with the algorithm, gets us out there to more people. We've grown a lot these last couple of months, and we owe that all to you guys. You guys have been great, and we're going to continue to roll out amazing content for you as the season wraps up, the off season wraps up, and we roll into the actual season. Our season is finishing, Dale. The Dynasty season is over.
Finally.
But yeah, we're going to be continuing all the content, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit us up one more time on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, and you can find the podcast on Twitter at FF After Dark. So until next time, thank you guys so much for listening, and have a good night.